Imagine standing on a cliff in the early hours before dawn, cold wind cutting across your face as the world holds its breath. Below you lies a coastline swallowed in fog, dotted with silhouettes of ships preparing for a war that could erase nations. Above, the sky is empty for now, but something invisible is already moving, something silent, something that decides who will strike first, and who will fall before ever seeing the enemy's face. Now imagine you have only 1 second, one single second, to detect what the enemy thinks is undetectable. Miss it, and the war swings in their favor. Catch it, and you rewrite the battlefield. That is the razor-thin line radar and Enigma created. A war fought not only with tanks or aircraft, but with pulses of energy and strands of code. These technologies didn't just assist the war, they reshaped it. They shifted strategy, altered timing, and rewired destiny itself. Welcome, history warriors. I'm Knightley. You're about to witness history like never before, and it all begins where the unseen becomes the most dangerous of all. The war that would test radar and Enigma did not begin with rumbling tanks or roaring aircraft. It began with fear of the unknown. Europe, late 1930s. Borders tightening, alliances shifting, nations preparing for a confrontation unlike any in history. Germany expanded rapidly, relying on speed, secrecy, and precision. Britain braced for a storm it knew was coming but could not yet see. Across oceans, distant nations watched, calculating how long they could stay away from a conflict already reshaping the world. What made this war different was not only its scale but its pace. Decisions unfolded in minutes, sometimes seconds. Aircraft could cross the channel in less than 20. Submarines lurked beneath shipping lanes, silent and unseen. Every commander understood a brutal fact. Whoever mastered information, its capture, its concealment, its timing, would command the battlefield long before armies met. Radar and Enigma were born in this pressure, one to illuminate the sky, the other to hide messages in unbreakable shadows. Two technologies, one defensive, one offensive, spiraling toward a collision that would determine supply lines, fleets, invasions, and survival. Now the tension builds, the tools are ready, the stakes are rising. Before the first decisive clashes, the war shifted into a silent contest of intellect and innovation. Britain needed a way to see attacks coming before aircraft crossed its shores. Germany needed a way to coordinate its lightning-fast offensives without revealing intentions. Radar and Enigma emerged not as optional tools, but as lifelines for nations trapped in an accelerating conflict. Each side knew that minutes could decide the fate of cities, fleets, even continents. In this atmosphere of tightening urgency, technology became strategy, and strategy became survival. The race was not only to deploy new systems, but to perfect them under pressure. It was a battle of minds long before it became a battle of machines. Germany's high command relied heavily on encrypted wireless communication. Their Enigma machine, a compact device with rotating wheels, produced seemingly unbreakable codes. To its operators, it felt invincible. Messages vanished into mathematical labyrinths that changed daily. Commanders like Admiral Dönitz, sharp, methodical, and relentless, believed Enigma guaranteed dominance across the Atlantic. U-boat wolf packs depended on it. Orders to intercept convoys were sent through these encrypted channels, enabling swift, coordinated strikes. Germany trusted the machine completely, certain no enemy could possibly decode its secrets. That confidence shaped every strategic decision they made. Across the Channel, Britain moved just as urgently. At Bawdsey Manor, then along the eastern coast, engineers built a chain of early warning radar towers. They called it Chain Home. Tall steel structures scanning the sky with invisible pulses. Their mission: detect incoming aircraft far before they reached British airspace. One of the system's champions, Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, calm yet fiercely determined, believed information, not brute force, would win the air war. Radar gave Britain something priceless: time. Time to scramble fighters, time to predict enemy formations, time to turn chaos into structured defense. But tools alone meant nothing without brains to interpret them. That role fell to Bletchley Park, Mathematicians, linguists, chess prodigies, and eccentric geniuses converged in a quiet estate hidden behind hedges and iron gates. Alan Turing, analytical and introverted, approached Enigma like a puzzle the world insisted was impossible. Gordon Welchman, sharp and innovative, refined the systems needed to process thousands of messages. Their goal wasn't merely to read German traffic, it was to do it fast enough to change battlefield outcomes. Time pressure defined their lives. Every hour of delay meant a convoy left exposed or a city bombed without warning. Meanwhile, the Germans refined their U-boat strategy. Their wolf packs hunted in coordinated groups, striking Allied convoys in the cold Atlantic nights. Enigma traffic directed them to vulnerable shipping lanes. Merchant ships carried fuel, food, weapons, lifelines for Britain's survival. Lose too many, and Britain would starve into surrender. Dönitz knew this. He believed U-boats could strangle the island before reinforcements arrived from across the ocean. His crews trained relentlessly, mastering silent approaches, torpedo volleys, and rapid submergence before escorts could retaliate. The Atlantic became a chessboard of steel shadows. Britain's response hinged on fusing radar detection and code-breaking insights into a single intelligence picture. This system would later be known as the Dowding system, the world's first integrated air defense network. Radar spotted incoming formations. Observer Corps confirmed altitude and direction. Command rooms plotted movements in real time. Fighter groups received precise scrambling orders. It was coordination refined into science, every minute measured, every response calculated. While Germany relied on secrecy, Britain relied on clarity. Both systems evolved daily as each side tested for weaknesses. Suspense tightened as the two technologies, one hiding, one revealing, expanded across continents. Enigma encrypting faster, with more variants. Radar growing stronger, scanning further. Both sides sensed a confrontation approaching, where the first misstep could tilt the war. Engineers worked through sleepless nights. Commanders studied shifting intel reports. Mathematicians reconfigured machines. Pilots waited for orders that could come at any moment. Every component, every mind, every decision locked into a momentum no one could stop. The stage was nearly set, the pieces nearly aligned. Silence before the storm. The turning point did not begin with an explosion. It began with a clue, small, overlooked, almost dismissed. A captured German weather ship, intercepted in the freezing Atlantic, carried Enigma codebooks sealed in metal cases. The documents were damp, fragile but intact. For the first time, Bletchley Park gained a window into naval encryption that had long resisted every attempt to decode it. Analysts gathered around the salvaged pages with a reverence normally reserved for relics. They understood instantly. This was not a minor breakthrough. It was the opening of a door Germany believed was unbreakable. Inside Hut 8, the atmosphere shifted from determined struggle to electrified urgency. Alan Turing and his team recalibrated their bombs using the new settings. Wheels spun, circuits hummed, possibilities collapsed. Encrypted messages that once appeared as impenetrable clouds now began revealing patterns, subtle yet unmistakable. One historian would later remark, "It was as if the war suddenly started speaking." With each decoded message, convoy courses, U-boat patrol lines, and coordinated wolfpack attacks were exposed. The Allies were no longer reacting. They were anticipating. Germany remained unaware of the breach. Listening stations captured a surge of Enigma traffic. Bletchley interpreted it in hours, not days. Convoys that would have sailed into traps now shifted routes under cover of darkness. U-boats surfaced to find empty seas where rich targets should have been. Admirals demanded explanations. Commanders blamed weather, faulty sightings, careless patrols. But behind the scenes, an invisible hand was steering the Atlantic. Intelligence, once a whisper, had become a weapon. The air war experienced its own shift. Radar stations, refined through night after night of combat, became faster, sharper, and more coordinated. Britain reduced losses while increasing successful interceptions. German bomber groups reported unacceptable attrition rates. Pilots expressed shock at how frequently British fighters appeared at the perfect moment, too early to be coincidence, too precise to be luck. One Luftwaffe officer later wrote, "They saw us before we saw them, every time." The combined effect, radar clarity and code-breaking accuracy, reshaped strategy. U-boat ambushes were countered before they formed. Air raids met resistance the moment they crossed the channel. Germany's advantage, once built on secrecy and speed, eroded. A single mistake magnified the collapse. The German Navy introduced a new Enigma rotor, but repeated predictable weather phrases in encrypted messages. This repetition helped analysts verify rotor settings faster. As Turing noted quietly to a colleague, patterns are the enemy of secrecy. Soon came the most decisive shift. An intercepted Enigma message revealed the exact location of a massive wolf pack preparing to strike a heavily loaded convoy. Instead of sailing blindly forward, Allied command redirected escort groups and long-range aircraft. When U-boats rose to attack, they found a wall of fire waiting. Depth charges thundered into the water. Bombs fell from patrol planes, sweeping low across the waves. Several submarines were damaged, others retreated. It was the first time a Wolfpack assault collapsed before it began. Reports reached Berlin. Confusion followed. How had the Allies anticipated such movements? Dönitz insisted Enigma was unbreakable. Officers agreed. They blamed leaks, loose communications, or improbable luck. No one imagined the machine itself was compromised. That disbelief guaranteed further failure. As Enigma traffic continued flowing, Bletchley Park read more messages in real time. Every day unlocked fresh insight. Every night tightened the Allied grip on the Atlantic. Historians often summarize the moment this way. The fog lifted. The Allies could suddenly see across airfields, across coastlines, across oceans. Radar shaped the skies. Decoded Enigma shaped the seas. The combined intelligence allowed commanders to shift from desperate defense to measured offense. A strategist later observed, it was the moment technology stopped reacting to war and started directing it. The turning point wasn't a single explosion or victory, but a transformation, an intellectual ascendancy that reshaped every front. When the tide finally shifted, it did so quietly. Through statistics, convoy reports, and changing patrol patterns, Allied shipping losses decreased. Routes once considered perilous became manageable. The Atlantic, for years a graveyard of merchant vessels, grew steadily safer. Radar-guided aircraft pushed U-boats farther from convoy lanes. Escorted groups sailed with growing confidence. On charts inside Allied command rooms, red marks representing lost ships began to thin. The numbers told a story of recovered momentum, even if the sea still demanded a price. Germany felt the change, but could not pinpoint the cause. In the air, the consequences were equally profound. The Luftwaffe's strategy, built on fast, devastating raids, struggled against Britain's early warning network. Radar denied surprise. Missed targets multiplied. Aircraft returned damaged or not at all. The loss of seasoned crews weakened operational capability. The Allied defenders, though strained, adapted through constant coordination. Fighter command kept reserves ready, conserving strength for critical interceptions. Cities still suffered, but the scale of destruction never matched Germany's expectations. Radar preserved industrial capacity essential for later offensives. On the German side, frustration grew. U-boat commanders reported shrinking opportunities, heavier resistance and decreasing success. Dönitz expanded patrol areas, introduced new tactics, and demanded greater discipline. But none of it countered the unseen opposition reading Enigma messages before operations began. Naval losses, while recorded neutrally, cut deeply into the U-boat fleet. Damaged submarines needed long repairs, crews grew anxious as patrols became increasingly dangerous. The ocean, once a field of advantage, turned against them. Strategically, the consequences stretched far beyond individual battles. The safer Atlantic lifeline allowed the United States to supply Britain with equipment, vehicles, fuel, and food. Factories across North America produced at unprecedented speed, feeding a war effort that now had secure transport. The flow of materials enabled major operations, the North African campaign, Italy, and eventually the invasion of Western Europe. Without reliable supply lines, these offensives would have stalled. Radar and Enigma decryption made logistical miracles possible. The human cost remained heavy, even if expressed in neutral terms. Convoys still lost ships. Crews still abandoned vessels in freezing waters. Airfields mourned pilots who never returned from sorties. Codebreakers, bound by secrecy, endured silent pressure and exhaustion. German sailors faced increasing danger, sometimes spending patrols without sighting a single target, only to be attacked unexpectedly. Each side absorbed losses, measured not only in equipment, but in experience, skill, and morale. Technology reduced casualties but did not eliminate them. Long-term consequences reshaped the modern world. Radar advanced rapidly, leading to peacetime innovations in aviation safety, weather forecasting, and scientific research. Computer science accelerated through efforts to break Enigma, giving birth to concepts that would eventually transform global communication. The collaboration between mathematicians, engineers, and strategists created new fields of study. Intelligence became a central pillar of warfare, equal to firepower and manpower. The conflict proved that information, when harnessed correctly, could influence outcomes as powerfully as any weapon. By war's end, both technologies had altered the balance irreversibly. Germany's reliance on encrypted coordination became its vulnerability. Britain's investment in radar became its shield. The Atlantic remained contested, but the Allies held strategic initiative. Historians note that victory did not hinge on a single battle. It hinged on sustaining a lifeline. Radar and code-breaking ensured that lifeline endured. As one strategist later summarized, the war was not won by the strongest fleet or the fastest aircraft, but by the clearest picture. Looking back, the struggle between radar and Enigma was more than a contest of machines. It was a confrontation between two philosophies of warfare. Germany invested faith in secrecy, believing that if no one could read their plans, their forces would move freely across oceans and skies. Britain invested faith in visibility, believing that if they could observe the enemy early enough, no strike would go unanswered. These opposing ideas shaped strategies, outcomes, and ultimately the future of global conflict. Historians often emphasize the intellectual nature of this war. The fields of mathematics, engineering, linguistics, and logic became as vital as tanks or warships. At Bletchley Park, analysts confronted daily problems that had no precedent. They invented not only solutions but entire methods of thinking. One modern historian reflected, "It was the moment human reasoning became a weapon." In contrast, Germany's confidence in Enigma blinded them to subtle patterns that might have revealed its vulnerabilities. From a leadership perspective, the conflict demonstrated the power of distributed vision. Britain's air defense network worked because information flowed quickly, cleanly, and accurately. Dowding trusted his radar operators, commanders trusted the data, pilots trusted the orders. The system worked as a unified organism. Germany's structure, by contrast, often centralized decisions, limiting field adaptability. When Enigma was compromised, U-boat crews had no flexibility to compensate. Leadership choices either tightened or weakened the technological advantage. Logistics also shaped outcomes. Radar stations required maintenance teams, communication lines, and trained operators. Bletchley Park required thousands of personnel working day and night. These systems consumed resources, but the investment created exponential returns. Germany, stretched across vast fronts, struggled to sustain similarly large analytical operations. The lesson endures. Technology is only as effective as the infrastructure supporting it. Without coordination, even the most advanced tools lose impact. A deeper reflection concerns the relationship between transparency and security. Britain's strategy embraced early detection, accepting that the enemy would always attempt to strike. Germany's strategy embraced concealment, assuming surprise attacks would compensate for vulnerabilities. In practice, transparency provided stability. Concealment, once broken, collapsed. This contrast shaped modern military doctrine, where constant surveillance and rapid intelligence analysis are considered essential to national security. The human element remains central. Behind every radar console stood an operator, scanning for faint signals on dim screens. Behind every decoded message sat analysts sorting fragments of meaning. Behind every U-boat patrol stood crews enduring cold, pressure, and uncertainty. Their experiences remind us that technology does not replace human effort, it amplifies it. The war highlighted how innovation demands patience, discipline, and collective will. Nothing about the process was automatic or effortless. In the end, radar and Enigma represent a pivotal transformation in warfare. Battles were no longer decided solely by firepower. They were decided by who understood the battlefield first, who adapted fastest, and who controlled the informational landscape. The lessons resonate today. Security must evolve constantly, coordination must remain flexible, and innovation must never stagnate. When knowledge flows freely and intelligently, it becomes a force multiplier. Remember the cliff at dawn, the wind biting through fog, the moment when every second counted. That moment was no longer hypothetical. Radar had revealed the invisible. Enigma, once thought unbreakable, had been penetrated by human ingenuity. The war had been reshaped not by brute force alone, but by intellect, innovation, and relentless observation. Battles that could have been disasters were transformed into calculated outcomes. Entire campaigns depended on what could be seen, predicted, and understood before it occurred. The human cost was never erased, yet the toll was mitigated. Convoys reached ports, cities survived raids, lives endured because systems, operators, and analysts worked in perfect, if invisible, concert. Technology alone did not win the war. People did, wielding innovation as a tool of survival and strategy. Radar and Enigma are now more than machines. They are symbols of how knowledge can shape destiny, how foresight can outweigh force. Thank you for witnessing this journey. Your attention honors those who labored behind screens, in cold towers, and on storm-tossed seas. Like, comment, and subscribe to continue exploring the stories that reshaped history. Next time, Manhattan Project, Birth of Atomic Bomb. You won't believe what happened there.